Oh, hello there. We didn't see you.
Welcome to drama
With llamas.
in pajamas.
We are the Drama Llamas. I'm Ashley.
And I'm Athanasia, and we are classical actors who have been making art together since Uber was an adjective.
We are here with you today to help bring you into the world of classical theater. We hope to teach you how to understand mostly Shakespeare, but also other classical playwrights and genres.
Remember, no one wrote a play hoping it would bore you, so we hope to help you not only understand, but to enjoy this work as well.
So, get comfy in your pajamas.
Grab your llamas
And let's do some drama! I'm hurt. I'll plague of both your houses. I'm sped. Is he gone and hath nothing?
What, art thou hurt?
Aye, it's a scratch. Mary, 'tis enough. Where's my page? Go, villain, fetch a surgeon.
Courage, man, the hurt cannot be much.
No, 'tis not so deep as a well, nor so wide as a church door, but 'tis enough 'twill serve. Ask for me tomorrow, and you shall find me a grave man. I'm peppered, I warrant, for this world. A plague of both your houses! Zounds, a dog, a rat, a cat, to scratch a man to death, a braggart, a rogue, a villain that fights by the book of arithmetic. By the devil you came between us. I was hurt under your arm.
I thought all for the best.
Help me into some house or I shall faint. A plague of both your houses! They've made worm's meat of me. I have it, and soundly too. Your houses!
Why do you love this character so much, and why did you want to share him with our audience?
Honestly, because I just think that he'd be so much fun to play. Like he's the comic relief, but he's such a bro, and I find his lines to just be hilarious. Like there are so many double entendres in his lines. You know, if love be rough with you, be rough with love. And here's my fiddlestick, which usually the actor is references their sword. But we all know that what they're talking about because it's testosterone city up there, and Mercutio is obsessed with his sword, which could be a metaphor for, again, we all know what. But it's great because you could decide, is he literally talking about his sword and he's just like always like raring for a fight, or is he like talking about his sword? It's a hashtag you decide kind of a situation. And so he's also, there's just so many puns with him, and the language that how he speaks is just so colorful, and which as we have said before is part of what makes Shakespeare so great and so fun to read. And I get such a kick out of his lines. Like I can't say it enough. He's always looked at as the fool or the comic relief in this play, but I think his end is the biggest tragedy in the play, and not just because it's the end of the comic relief for the rest of the play. It's a kind of an unpopular opinion. It's a hashtag unpopular opinion. But Mercutio's death, it's the first death in the play, and the fact that he isn't a Montague or a Capulet just shows how holding on to anger and hatred for so many years just destroys not only you, but everything around you. He got swept up in this drama, and, the drama should have been saved for thy llama, but, yes. He was trying to defend his friend, and, granted, he didn't need to fight Tybalt for Romeo. He could have just let it be.
And Tybalt is Juliet's cousin, for those who are unfamiliar.
For those who are unfamiliar with the play, Tybalt is Juliet's cousin. And at the beginning of this scene, Tybalt comes looking for Romeo, and he wants to fight Romeo because Romeo was at the Capulets' party earlier on in the play, and Tybalt wanted to fight him right there and then because he's like, how dare this Montague show up at our party, and how dare he? But Lord Capulet is like, you saucy boy, and like, stop trying to ruin my party, because the prince in the very beginning was like, there can't be any more of this stuff in the street, and if there is, like, you're all gonna be in big trouble. And
what is it with violence over the guest list at parties in Shakespeare?
I don't know, man. I don't know. But anyway, so this is Tybalt coming to defend his family's honor, because there was a Montague, an enemy in their territory, and Romeo just married Juliet, so he's like, I'm not gonna fight you, like, we're related, like, he's like, he doesn't say it exactly like that, he dances around the subject and kind of like alludes to these things, but Tybalt's like, oh no, and then Romeo's like, I'm not doing it, and Mercutio's like, what the heck, bro, like, you can't just back down, you've gotta fight him, because again, all the testosterone with these boys. But also, on top of that, back then, like, your honor and your name were a huge deal. This is where knowing the time period comes into play. So, like, you may look at it today and just be like, these silly boys, but even today you see boys fighting on the playground for silly things.
And there are cultures and gang wars and even countries, like if you think back 100 years ago with World War I.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. So, but it was a huge deal, and even though it was Romeo's name that was getting dragged through the mud, Mercutio consorts with Romeo, as Tybalt says earlier in this scene. He says that you can like he was attached to Romeo by proxy because they were friends, and a slap in the face like that to Romeo, Mercutio takes that as a slap in the face to him, and he's like, well, I can't have that, I have to defend my honor. And because of that, which all was started because of their hate, Mercutio had to pay for it with his life, and I think that's just, to me, that's just incredibly tragic and sad.
Yeah, definitely. So you mentioned that there is a larger message to the play beyond it's a love story. How do you see Mercutio functioning as part of the larger message of this play?
Yeah, so as you said, it's a love story. It's not. Okay, I'm just going to stop everybody right there. This is not a love story. It's a tragedy, okay? It's not a love story. It's tragedy. People die in the end. Not everybody, but a lot of people die in the end. And so for me, personally, I don't think that the message is it's a love story. I think that the message is about the importance of forgiveness and how you have to let go of your anger and your hatred and grudges, etc. Because if you don't, it eats you alive and eventually consumes everything and everyone around you. I think that's so important today, especially to remember how important it is to forgive. And the Montagues and Capulets, they don't even remember what they're feuding about. What they're feuding about doesn't get mentioned in the play. It's just, they've always hated each other, and that's just how it is. And, I know how hard it is to forgive, but I personally believe that you can't truly heal unless you forgive. There's this saying, and I don't know exactly the original source, but I hear it all the time, where holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. And I think that applies here,
I mean, quite literally.
Yeah. Even at the end of the play, the prince says, see what a scourge is laid upon your hate, that heaven finds means to kill your joys with love. But it's not just their loves, not just their children that got killed. Like, there was a lot of people in their orbit that got killed, and not just the ones in the play, because the prince at the end is so angry about it, and he says, and I for winking an eye for winking at your discord too, have lost a brace of kinsmen, all are punished. So it's not just the people in the play that have died. Like, throughout this whole time, people have been killed, people have died. That's why the prince is so angry in the beginning about the big fight. And it's sad that it's not until it's right directly in their orbit that their children had to get killed for them to be like, oh, you know what everyone has been saying is true, we should forgive each other, like, I'm sorry. Like, it's sad that had happened, that all had to be punished. And it's true, all are punished when you let negativity rule your world.
Yeah, definitely. So the prince refers to the Montagues and Capulets feud as a scourge. Um, this scene contains a very, very famous line. Anybody who's studied the play knows it, and it's also weaseled its way into popular culture, which is a plague of both your houses. So why don't you unpack the original meaning for our listeners who have heard this line so many times?
Yes. So the first time I had ever, heard of Romeo and Juliet, which I'm sure is for a lot of people watching, was in school. And in school, and like even at movie adaptations, the line in school they teach that the line is a plague on both your houses. And I've seen movie adaptations, specifically the one that I'm thinking of right now is Baz Luhrmann's interpretation, and the line is changed to a plague on both your houses. But this is where knowledge of what words meant back then and knowledge of elisions comes into play that we talked about in our rhetorical devices episode, so you should go back and watch that.
Yeah, and the what words meant and the iambic pentameter.
Yeah.
And this is why we do character analysis.
Right, exactly. This is why we do character analysis, because things get lost in translation.
Exactly.
And so it is not on. The actual line is a plague apostrophe both your houses. And apostrophe does not mean on, it actually means of. And I really don't understand where the disconnect came for this. Like, I think a lot of people want it to be on because I at least heard in school that, like, oh, he cursed their families and that's foreshadowing for the deaths of Romeo and Juliet later in the play. No. He is saying a plague of both your houses, and there's evidence to back up that apostrophe is of, not on. In Shakespeare, but also in other places. In A Twelfth Night, Act 1, Scene 3, Sir Toby says, she'll none o' the count. Meaning, she will none of the count. Like, she's done with him, no more of him. And then also in Twelfth Night, Act 1, Scene 5, Maria says, peace you rogue, no more o' that. Means no more of that. It's not no more on that, or, none on the count. That doesn't make any sense. And, even today, we say things like, oh, I'll have a cup o' coffee, a cup of joe, a cup o' sugar. You're not saying a cup on coffee or a cup on sugar.
A cup on coffee would totally defeat the point.
Right. It doesn't make any sense. And Merriam-Webster's dictionary defines apostrophe as meaning of. So it's safe to say that o means of. It does not mean on. So what Mercutio is actually saying is a plague of both your houses, meaning his death is a part of this plague that their families are bringing to the town. And he's talking about the consequences of their actions. Granted, like I said, he is responsible for his ending partially, because he didn't have to fight. But he needed, it was a whole honor thing. And also, like, I think the whole plague thing, like a plague on both your houses, a curse, may have come, this is just me speculating, I'm not exactly sure, but like the bubonic plague was a big thing back then, and so like maybe people were thinking that they meant a plague on to be like the curse that was the bubonic plague. I don't know, but I still think that it works even with of, because like I said, it's the plague that your family, it's plague that is part of your family, and you've brought it to this town on all of us.
Well, thank you so much for clearing that up. Once and for all, you heard it here first, ladies, gentlemen, and everyone in between. And thank you so much, Ashley, for sharing both the comedy and the tragedy of Romeo's sidekick. So many people focus on the lovers of Romeo and Juliet, but it's not a love story. Each character has their own flavor and perspective to bring to the whole plot of the play. Join us next time to meet Mark Antony from Shakespeare's Julius Caesar. Now, if you know the actual history of any particular person, be prepared for Shakespeare's history to treat them a little differently. History is just an excuse to not make up your own plot. Make sure to mark the date in your planner.
Because if it's not in your planner, then it doesn't exist. And please remember, if you like our vibe,
there is that button that is called subscribe.